Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the Gameweek 2 pod of the FPL Wire, powered by DreamSetGo. I'm your host, Zopha. My co-host, Late Riser, and I are joined, as always, by our friend, Big Man Bakar. How's it going, buddy?
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, it's going well. Very happy to have FPL back in my life. 73 points to begin with. Solid enough start. It's important at this stage not to fall behind the rest of the pack. And I think I've given myself a good foundation for the weeks going forward. I won't ask you about your weeks off because obviously our team is the same. So I'll move straight to Pranil. How was your week, Pranil?
Before we move any further, Bakar, what's been up with your Instagram game, man? You've been a naughty boy on there. I'm just going. I've been following your Instagram. I've been sort of stalking it and been seeing what's been up on that page all week.
I hope you're not the only one who's stalking it.
5-6 days ago, Bakar's playing games with his audience. You know what he's doing? Like 5-6 days ago, he tweets or puts up an Instagram post saying the best differentials to own balls. I'm like, all right, this sounds interesting. And then he does a tweet where Gameweek 1 is done. And he's like, you know what, everybody needs to breathe easy, no knee jerking, hold firm. And then he puts like a sleeping emoji. Are you trying to tell your audience you're sleeping or that you're busy? D&D? I'm actually quite interested in this, Bakar. What's been up?
I mean, it's a subjective matter. Why don't you interpret the way you want it to? I'm sure the audience knows better than me.
My interpretation is
I'm only here to mess with you guys.
I'm just thinking things have been up. Can you either confirm or deny?
No.
Okay, he can neither confirm or deny. Right. Cool. I had a decent week too. I mean, the difference between average and me was owning Kane instead of Haaland. Outside of that, pretty good. Things are doing fine. A lot of emotions were felt on Sunday. Did a little impromptu stream on Sunday morning with FPL Browser because lots of thoughts in my head. Then obviously the United game happened where a lot of feelings were felt. Then I saw the Kane and Haaland debacle where I own Kane. So yeah, feelings were felt, not to behind. Let's see what we do further.
Right. Should we get into it? Start with the sponsor plugs. Jump in right away. Let's go. DreamSetGo is India's first sports travel and experiences platform, offering a range of premium end-to-end authentic experiences across football, cricket, tennis, F1, rugby and golf, among others. From matchday hospitality to VIP stadium tours, from private meet and greets with athletes and legends to exclusive access to their training sessions, DreamSetGo curates the most fulfilling sports travel packages for fans like you. All data you see on the FPL Wire is taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. The new improved members area is now up and running, and the new comparison tool lets you compare key stats for up to 3 players. Player projections are also live, and as always, you can access the custom stats table we create or make one for yourself. Sign up for membership today using our affiliate link in the description below. Right. Game week 2. So what I think basic layout, we'll take an approach. We'll discuss all these teams. We'll go fixture by fixture, and we discuss what we took away from each team from game week 1 and how we look about what our thoughts are for their assets in game week 2. Let's start first with Aston Villa. And I think one player I think we all own, Bailey. Do you own him, LR? No.
Yes.
Or we all do own him. What were your thoughts on Bailey?
I mean, it's not about Bailey. It's about Aston Villa. And the thing that comes to my head is, what is Steven Gerrard up to? He's been fiddling with his front six for a while now, and he's not settled on a team yet. And, you know, game week 1 could just be a little dud performance. Bournemouth scored early and then absolutely parked the bus. So a lot of game state was also in play there because they scored in the 3rd or 4th minute, if I'm not mistaken. And I think they're going to face similar against Everton game week 2 as well. It absolutely blew my mind that Watkins started instead of, Ings started instead of Watkins. And that's a little bit of a yellow red flag in terms of what Gerrard is up to, because I don't think he's settled, and that's a problem.
Bakar, your thoughts?
I was very surprised to see Villa not score actually at all, because Bournemouth have been absolutely decimated with injuries. They were actually fielding their reserve centre back in this game, and there was I read that their defensive midfielder was playing as the DM. I read in the scout notes. And secondly, when it comes to Villa, the team selection was all over the place. I mean, I was having a look at the Villa forums, and they were absolutely livid with Gerrard for the team he selected, because Coutinho was very poor, and they've been calling for Buendia to be included for a while now, and Buendia just doesn't seem to be in Gerrard's good books. Encouragingly for us Bailey owners, he got 90 minutes and he wasn't hooked, despite the fact that the team was poor. And I caught a bit of the highlights. I thought he looked decent, and he was playing very advanced, even according to the average position map. So I think if you own him, we definitely play him and give him another chance against Everton, because I don't think there's any doubt regarding him starting. But yes, I was very surprised to see what happened. And at this point, I'd also like to mention that I won't let this one game alone put me off my initial assessment of targeting Bournemouth, because I think this game was a bit of an anomaly, and it was just down to how disjointed Villa were rather than how good Bournemouth were or will be in the weeks coming ahead.
Yeah. Bakar, if you have $1 million in the bank sitting with Bailey and you can move to Martinelli, Gameweek 2, would you do it?
Yes, I will, because Martinelli for me is the standout midfielder in that price range. But in any other case, I won't sell him, for a budget midfielder.
Yeah.
Zoph, your thoughts?
I agree with Bakar said with Bailey. I had nothing more to add, but there's something up at Villa with the whole Mings debacle also. Reading some weird statements about he want Mings to look him in the eye, but now I read something that he's also nursing an injury. So the backline also is a little bit unsettled. As a Dean owner also, I would be a little bit worried, but obviously you hold firm because Villa at home, they obviously attack a lot more. It's their first home game of the season. Everton away, we know what they were like last season. So there's definitely a fixture you have to give your Villa guys.
Especially with Godfrey and Mina both looking like they're going to be injured as well.
But they have decent centre backs. Now they signed Cody. Now they have Tarkowski. They can still field Holgate. They don't have to go to Keane, even if they want to keep a back three. So it's not as bad as last year, the defensive situation.
My only worry is, again, it will be sort of like a similar game. The good thing is at least they'll be playing at home. But the game against Chelsea also, I mean, Everton sat deep and did a pretty decent job of it. So I wonder if Everton face a similar level opposition in terms of whether they'll be more attacking, etc. What do you see there?
I think so, because they were very precautious against Chelsea. I think it had to do with a lack of a centre forward, which might be the case also this weekend probably. I don't think they have anyone who's coming back or they'll sign anyone by that time, but it's definitely a more winnable fixture than Chelsea.
Yeah.
Move on. I think in terms of Everton assets, not much to talk about.
Nope.
Arsenal,
Patterson was good.
Just to touch upon that. Him and versus Nico, I'm not convinced which way, if anyone to buy, will go. We'll talk about that more a bit later, I guess, in a few pods. You need to see more of both. Arsenal, Leicester, Jesus is being sold in droves. What was that like, Pranil, not owning Jesus on Friday night?
Not fun. I won't lie, especially because of the ridiculous ownership. That's like 75% plus. And in my head, I'm thinking that Leicester is dangerous, especially in terms of what we saw, because that game against Brentford, it was a game of two halves. Leicester had it in control throughout, and then Broch did Broch things and got Brentford back into the game with ridiculous substitutions. So Leicester are capable of both. I mean, if they just hold firm, pack the midfield, things should be fine, and Arsenal shouldn't score that many goals, but it's Broch and he's literally capable of anything. So, again, the wide range in terms of bell curve, I wouldn't be surprised if Leicester win 1-0. I wouldn't be surprised if Leicester lose 4-1. That's where I'm at. Scary.
I'll always be surprised if Leicester keep a clean sheet. That's just
yeah. Fair enough. I agree with that. It's just they're so unpredictable in terms of what they're doing. Also, from what I'm hearing, your clubs put in an increased bid for Fofana as well. So everybody else after Fofana, I mean, Evans and Fofana are good, and then the downgrade after that is quite massive for me to be assured about Leicester. And I'm also very worried about people that have jumped on double 4 million keepers as well. Yeah, the point in my head always was that, if you're going to 4 million keepers, week 1 onwards, you're going to start bleeding points to the field. And you need to make up those points as soon as possible, or where you're using that 1.5 million, that needs to come through quite often, and it doesn't. It looks like a far reach at the moment. So, yeah, that's also another worry.
Bakar, anything to add on this fixture? Arsenal Leicester.
I like what I saw from Jesus, and I think the 30,000 people who've sold him at the time of recording are in for a rude awakening when they look at the next three fixtures. Leicester, I think, is a prime fixture. Then Arsenal playing two promoted sides in Fulham and Bournemouth, and I expect them to score plenty of goals. So yeah, if you have him, you keep him easy.
But I also think 228,000 over 230,000 that have sold him will probably forget the deadline on Saturday. I think they're casuals. That's about it.
Or they're going for
And
Darwin.
no serious manager worth their salt is going to sell Gabriel Jesus.
I don't think selling him for Darwin is the worst move, but yeah, I get the point you're making. Let's talk about the defense. I thought they were very solid in defense, and I think there needs to be investment there. If you're not already on it, Saliba at 4.5, I think, or I don't know if he's gone up. I think he's
4.5.
Still 4.5.
Yeah.
Looked fantastic value. Ramsdale, I think, is going to be a great prospect as well. 2 great saves, almost in the bonus. So get on the defense, not just their attack. That's the thing. You could argue for triple attack over the next 3 fixtures, but I think there's a lot of value in their defense.
Yeah, for Saliba at 4.5, if I was wildcarding today, he'd be in my team. Like, he looks like the Ben White of last season, but with good potential for bonus points and a decent set piece threat as well. Arsenal are good on set plays now, outside of Liverpool and one more club. I think they were third
Man City,
in terms of Man City. Yeah, they were third for number of set piece goals they've scored as well. So you have that threat as well. 4.5 is a little bit of a gift. If you're wildcarding, he's a must. Just a very good pick, that's all. Not a must, a very good pick.
Before we move on to Brighton Newcastle, just some stats from Go ahead.
Just in terms of Gabriel Jesus, if somebody were like me and part of the 25%, would you move to Jesus now or maybe this next week?
Who are you selling?
It depends on who you own. Yeah.
Bamford against Southampton.
Who do Leeds
easy
play?
hold, I think.
Yeah, Southampton looked very poor.
Yeah, easy hold, yeah. Cool, yeah, because Gabriel Jesus is most likely...
Not easy hold, but since you've already done the move for it's not worth a hit, I wouldn't go as far to say it's an easy hold.
Yeah.
If
I had no other transfers to make, I
might have done that.
Yes, but for a hit, I'm really not sure.
Right.
Because Bamford looked good as well, and that's why I'm a bit hesitant to root for a hit.
Yeah, that was a 15-pointer. I mean, Christensen punched Sa in the face and I didn't get a penalty. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? And then that save that Sa made also, open header, clean header. It's ridiculous. Like, he doesn't make that save 8 out of 10 times, I reckon. So a little bit of salt there.
Move on to the next fixture.
Anything else to discuss with Arsenal? I think they're a team we should talk about, especially because of the good run of fixtures. Martinelli, anything to put you off? I think if you don't own Martinelli, one other thing that was great is I thought his set piece delivery was good. And you're getting a set 6 million midfielder who sometimes plays as striker, because Jesus actually comes deep a fair bit. The good thing is when he comes deep and he's playing along with Odegaard and Saka and all of those people, he's very quick and pacey to drive forward in the chances. And what happens is when Jesus does come deep, Martinelli tends to occupy the central spaces. So if at all you're not on Martinelli, I'm convinced that he's the best pick in this price bracket.
Easily.
Would you guys agree with that?
Completely agree. But just a note on Saka, his numbers weren't great, but we should keep in mind he was doing a lot of defensive work on Zaha's side. So as a Saka owner, I would not be disheartened or read too much into this fixture at all.
Fair enough. Cool.
Right. Brighton Newcastle. LR, tell us about Brighton.
It's really good team. Really, really good team. And that's when we did the defender pod or the midfielder pod, was it? Remember the spike that we saw at the end for Brighton, Zoph?
Yes.
This is that team that he's playing with. He's not changed a thing except for Bissouma and Cucurella leaving. But, we spoke about how Brighton are system focused and well drilled and dependent more so on Potter than on the personnel. And he's got these 11 players who's sort of drilled in to play this way. We didn't have a chance. Honestly, we got some scope of control in the second half, but Potter was very, very smart and he set up deeper, and I thought they were comfortable in the way they defended against us, even though there was slight bit of impetus coming from United. But that first half, they were good, and they have a good run of fixtures. I wouldn't mind Sanchez at 4.5. He managed to get a fair amount of saves as well. I'm interested in monitoring Gross in that mid-price bracket because he was fairly further up the pitch. He's on set pieces. We know he's traditionally a bonus points monster. And again, in that team where that spike happened last season, Gross was playing in that team. So with Potter, you're always worrying about, who he's going to make random changes throughout the team at any point. But that's one pick I'm monitoring. Even Welbeck, if he's first choice at 6.5 million, Brighton have a good run. So just a couple of players I'm putting in the watch list without doing anything about it right now.
I think Trossard also goes there. I know the position map officially says right wing back, but he's playing as a winger. It's not really a wing back at all.
Yeah. Worth monitoring. Good team, and defensively could even be better than what we've seen, because now it's year 3 of Potter, right? So what he's been trying to drill into them year 1, year 2, now he's had that time. So yeah.
Moving on from Brighton, Bakar, talk to us about Newcastle.
I see what you did there. They were the team with the highest XG and the lowest XG conceded this week. They will play a huge part for us in the fixtures from game week 6 onwards. I don't have any FPL interest in them from game week 2 to game week 5 because their fixtures are tough. But from game week 6 onwards, their fixtures turn, and that's when I will look at monitoring them. Trippier was heavily involved. I think he's easily the pick of the defense. At that price, I do think he'll get a decent number of attacking returns, and he will get a share of the bonus as well because of the set pieces he's on. And Wilson is Wilson. He will continue to get points. He's just a very good asset to own when he's fit. And it's apart from those two, I don't think anyone else stands out as of now.
Yep. Newcastle.
Zoph, your takeaways?
I think Newcastle, Brighton, and possibly Palace also need to be put in the same bracket of where you expect a difficult match. I don't think the fixture difficulty ratings and stuff have oriented. This is very much, like you said, the Brighton of last year, very much the Newcastle of last year as well. What we saw the second half.
I would put Newcastle in on levels above Brighton and Crystal Palace. Personally, I think they're much better.
I could say that as well. Probably what we saw with West Ham last year. They're probably around a 6th to 8th place team level now. And this is without playing Botman.
And I also think in a weird sort of way that Shelby injury is sort of worked out for them, because I think Bruno Guimaraes is an outstanding player, and him playing as a sitting deep, orchestrating play, because Shelby has a mistake or two in him. With Joelinton and Guimaraes, this midfield feels very, very legit, and Willock is also quite mobile as well. So yeah, Newcastle defense, I'm here for it. I agree with your perspective that, if anybody is playing even a Newcastle at home, I'd be very wary of captaining my player against a Newcastle team. That's where I am. And Callum Wilson just shits goals when he's fit. If he's fit, he's going to get you goals. I don't even care about the opposition. That's how it is with.
Right. Move on to Man City, Bournemouth.
Yes.
A lot to talk about over here. Now, first question, a lot of people have been asking the price rise. If you've already missed it, would you still do Haaland to Kane for a hit? Bakar?
Kane to Haaland.
Kane to Haaland for a hit. Bakar?
Yes, I would. Simply because I do believe that he is captainable in any of the next 4 fixtures, barring Newcastle in game week 3. You look at the other 3 home games that have coming up: Bournemouth at home this week, and Crystal Palace in game week 4, and Nottingham Forest in game week 5. Now Haaland can get anything in those fixtures, and what I like is that City don't have any other fixture congestion to worry about right now, and Haaland will be fully rested. And when he's owned by over 50% of the game, it's too big a risk to go without. I'm convinced on him. Even if you've missed the price changes, I would make that move for a hit.
Same boat, Pranay. I agree with Bakar.
Yeah, I just want to actually say that, I told myself a story that Kane's capable of getting a hat-trick game week 1, and he will get more than 4 points, which is what a transfer costs, let's say, in our head, to allow me to comfortably make that transfer. And I was so wrong to make myself believe that story. And if you're still telling yourself stories to not get on Haaland, you're being incredibly stupid. Don't be stupid, get him.
Let's talk about how City changed their style of play. I noticed a lot of times they didn't have as much of the build-up. It was a lot more direct. Even when KDB was constantly trying to find the wingers, were trying to find Haaland, he could have easily had a hat-trick. There was a header which could have gone in. It's quite amazing how fast they've settled in and adapted to play to his
Yes,
strengths.
exactly. And speaking of which, there's this quote from Pep. He's adapting perfectly in the way we want to play. We are going to find him more and more, and hopefully we can give him as many opportunities to score as many goals as he wants as possible. This is the exact quote.
Scary.
Now, I mean, that's music to the ears of any fantasy owner who has him at this point in time. So, I mean, that's enough for me to own him and captain him.
And even about when we're talking about, them building chemistry to adapt to Haaland, what are we talking about here? So, I mean, we're talking about Kevin De Bruyne, we're talking about Phil Foden, we're talking about Jack Grealish, we're talking about Gundogan, we're talking about Bernardo Silva, Cancelo, probably the best players in that position in the league. How long will it take such world-class players to adapt to somebody like an Erling Haaland? Like, I feel like this is probably the last spot where we should waste any airwaves on Erling Haaland, because it's that obvious and it's staring you in the face and you shouldn't think otherwise.
Fair enough. Move on to midfield.
Yeah.
A lot of people are considering
Yes.
Foden for the 8 billion mids, which you're a big Foden fan. I thought he was a little bit ineffective on the right. The underlying numbers were also quite poor. I think he might need some time to adapt there. Your thoughts?
It's West Ham. Like, City weren't even playing, and I didn't even see them moving into second gear. They were happy to do City things and play the game out, and they knew that if they were patient, a chance would come, and they weren't even aggressive. I feel like that could change once they play at home. And Phil Foden, in my opinion, is a decent pick. What I'm really interested though in the City midfield and what I'm wanting to monitor is there are murmurs that are growing stronger that Bernardo Silva might move to Barcelona. And if that happens, the player I'm really interested in is Ike Gundogan at 7.5 million. Because he's got that smell of a goal, and it's always been the case, and he makes De Bruyne a slightly lesser asset. And I don't have any doubts in my head that he will cement that role in that second 8 position. And he could be somebody that could be very interesting, because when he's played, he's been a good FPL pick. So that's one thing I'm monitoring.
There is Calvin Phillips now, though. So you could have a Rodri, Calvin Phillips double pivot still.
Yeah. And again, so because of this doubt, I feel like, I'm going to circle back and admit my mistake here, Zoph, because we had a chat last week where you showed me a draft where you had Ruben Dias in your team. And I'm like, where the hell is this coming up from, et cetera, as well. And it's easy to get attracted by these high upside defenders, et cetera. But investing 5 or 6 million in somebody whose floor looks like 6 points in 2 out of 3 weeks because of how much control and possession they have in a game isn't a bad thing until you find a sure shot good thing. So yeah, I'm circling back on that. And I think even a second City defender, whether you're going for Edison or Walker or Diaz, good option.
It is,
because again, in my head, you're thinking about City, and I feel like the City mids are competing with some really good 8 million, 7 million midfielders, 9 million midfielders. We're talking about the likes of Kulusevski, Saka, Maddison, Mount, etc. Diaz, who I think was great. I somehow, at some level, those people feel like a little bit more of a sure shot thing, especially if they're going to push a lot of their chances towards Haaland only. So I don't know. Where do you stand on this, Bakar? Because I think it's a fair debate to have.
Speaking of the City defenders, I think one of the major regrets I have in my Game Week 1 draft was not to pick a City defender. I used to keep Perisic on my bench, and I think I probably
pick a
got
second
that wrong.
City defender. You have Cancelo.
Yeah, second City defender. Yeah. That's a decision I think I've gotten wrong. And you're absolutely bang on about Gundogan. I do think that he's going to be the runner. And while watching the game, I thought he was getting into great positions because Foden and Grealish were kind of playing wide. And if that is to be the case, then I think the 2 number 8s, that's De Bruyne and Gundogan, especially with his value, are going to be very good assets for us to consider in the weeks ahead. So he's one I have an eye on as well. And there are a lot of people who own Mahrez, Foden. I would suggest to stick with them this week simply because the fixture is too good that they're expected to do well in this fixture, and it just doesn't make any sense to sell
Would
them.
You stick with Mahrez though?
Yes, I would. I was actually scouring through the forums, and the significant majority of fans expect him to start.
And what, Foden plays on the right,
left,
or what happens?
Left.
And Grealish gets dropped.
Yes, that's the consensus. But regardless of that, I mean, if you've chosen a City mid by now, you just don't sell before a home game against Bournemouth, regardless of the rotation risk there is. And in a similar way, I don't think I'll be in any rush to buy them. I see quite a few people had penciled in moves from Kulusevski to a City mid this week. I don't think I'd be doing that right now.
Correct.
Similarly, if you have Mount, I don't think I'd be selling him for a City mid this week. I think I'd probably keep the faith, because I don't really think there is any standout pick there. It's very hard to call who the best pick is.
So if you were to pick a third City right now, in addition to Haaland and Cancelo, who would it be?
Walker. I like the new system that they've played now with the inverted fullbacks. I think Walker is going to get a lot more game time this season, have a lot more attacking potential. And let's circle back to what we were talking about Diaz. He's not a bad pick per se, but I do think there are better picks in defense. Because let's talk more about a macro strategy now. We were already talking about something you touched upon on your stream. Now moving funds up front. Earlier now,
just before we push to that, I want to touch upon City just a tad bit more, because in terms of midfield, if somebody like you who wants a short thing in terms of X minutes and consistently playing in front three, I'm not against Phil Foden at all. Like, I think he will get points. I think he will take along. There's scope for him to be, because what happens is, especially when the balls are coming from Grealish's side, he was on the back post. He was driving in centrally. He's got a good shot from far, left-footed as well, right-footed as well. So I think he's got a fair amount of avenues to points. And in my head, I have no doubt when Phil Foden is fit, he will start. So I just wanted to add that if somebody is looking for a Phil Foden, for a City midfielder, I think he's a sure thing in that price bracket.
Right. Going back to the Diaz discussion now, somebody like a Saliba, like we were talking about, is 4.5. Offers similar. Now, I don't think there'll be over the first 6 to 8 weeks that much difference between a Saliba and a Diaz. And that 1.5 goes a long way, similar with the Walker. So if you have Diaz, I don't think he's a bad pick at all. You probably stick with him now for a bit. But with so many attacking defenders, I think Perisic, once he gets on the pitch, we are going to want him. There's so many good attacking options. Even, I think, Trippier for 5 million is outstanding value. He rotates well with Andreas. So I think the better options in Diaz. I wouldn't necessarily go for the third City spot just because I need a third City spot to go for Diaz. I think they're better picks.
Yeah.
Anything else on City?
Anybody not captaining Haaland?
No,
I don't think so. Maybe if you want to go rogue, but we go Salah. I guess that's probably the only one.
Imagine Mo Salah at home against Crystal Palace is going rogue now, but it's not even in my head. Like, I'm captaining Haaland, like, zero doubts. Right.
Of course you are, Mr. Template. Let's move on to Southampton Leeds.
This, when you're force fitting like a narrative into a pod, this is what you're doing right now. So, but I actually think that leads to quite an interesting bit of macro discussion if you want to have it right now in terms of Haaland and Salah, or should we have that when we're talking about the Palace Liverpool game, because then there'll be more context.
Let's talk.
I think we should wait for the
let's do that.
game, Liverpool Palace game.
Not much to talk about. Bournemouth, Southampton, Leeds. Southampton in terms of assets, very dopey.
They have serious problems at the back. I think Southampton have serious problems at the back, and they're a team to target initially. Something's not right over there, and I think something will give. I think there's a decent chance that Taysom could even go. I don't get great vibes when I hear from him this season. Leeds impressed me. I thought Aronson was excellent. His stats weren't great, but he got into excellent positions, and I thought that he can play a very good role going forward. So for someone who has a Neto or a Bailey, he could be a potential route for those with those two.
So Pranil, you watched this game, right?
I watched the full game.
Why don't you tell us about Leeds and also Wolves?
Both teams are good, or rather decent in attack. Leeds more so than Wolves, because I feel like Leeds just take so many risks that they will have good attackers. And I think Bamford is legit. I think he's going to be a good option. I think Aronson in that midfield, Bakar was spot on. I mean, I was drooling over him. Such a good player. He's so fast on the turn, such a quick thinker. when you watch him, you're going to fall in love with him. He's that good a player. And they had a real good thing going. I mean, with Leeds, you're going to get spurts of some attacks, and that's going to happen. You're not going to get control as such. They're going to concede chances. So Aronson, in my head, is top of the pile. If in addition to Martinelli, you're looking at somebody in that bracket. Like if I was wildcarding today, I'd have Martinelli and Aronson in that price bracket, no doubt in my head. So that's something. And both teams are worth. I don't think Neto owners should be worried. He's a fabulous player. Now they have signed Guedes as well, and both Leeds and Wolves have a decent run until game week 6-7. So if there are other fires, etc., you should be happy to be patient with the picks here. But both teams are also worth targeting for your attackers. So if you have attackers playing either Leeds or Wolves, I think it's a good thing. Especially Wolves, we sort of in our subconscious have this mindset about Wolves as a tight game. It isn't the case anymore, especially with the formation that they're playing. So, yeah.
Yes, Cody is left as well. They're playing 4 at the back, and I thought they were very open again.
Should people buy Mitrovic? Bakar?
So if you talk to us about that, you felt some feelings there.
Yeah, I was very keen on going for Mitrovic. We have been ever since Luke's spot, but the Harry Wilson injury put me off because I didn't know how it's set up. How was it? That being said, XG numbers are not great, but Fulham were impressive overall. I think you have to give as much credit to them as much we do to Liverpool being poor. And I think this is going to be an open game. This feels to me like the 2-2 game for this weekend.
I completely agree.
But let's talk about Fulham a little, because they were able to score 2 goals and they were good value for those 2 goals against a team like Liverpool. I want to talk about Mitrovic because he looks a lot better than I saw him the last time. He's got like a deceptive turn of pace in the sense that he looks very slow because of his size, but he's actually much faster than that. His acceleration is fast. I mean, doing Van Dijk for a penalty is no joke, in my opinion. And there was this, if you saw in the first half, there was this chance where he got the ball in the middle of the pitch and he turned a couple of people and was able to drive forward. I think that's just an excellent player out here who's on penalties, etc. as well. So if you're going strikers, and let's face it, people are going to think about Haaland and Jesus not going anywhere given the runs we have. And then there's Darwin who's putting his hand up. And then there's Mitrovic as well. The striker bracket just looks really good to me. And Mitrovic looks like a proper glue pick. If you want a position that you don't want to change for a long time, I think you can keep Mitrovic in there for 6.5 million and breathe easy.
I think it's going to take over even in the tougher fixtures. Even Arsenal, where you won't bet against Fulham to score.
Yeah, because it's because of the caliber of the player, right? He's capable of pulling any defender. Like he's that good now. And we've seen proof. So, yeah. I also feel like there's a little bit of he seems like somebody who has a ton of ego. He's very professional from what we've heard, but there is a point to prove also because he's not done it. So I think there's a little bit of an extra fire. Let's talk about Andreas Pereira because I think it's a big meta. And his positioning was very, very, very advanced as we saw. He looks to me like a 1 in 3 or 4 return kind of guy. And he's not a 4.5 million mid. Bakar rightly tweeted he's a 5.5 million mid. So maybe it allows us to safeguard one position and go a little thinner in the squad. What do you think the impact of this is?
I don't think it's gone to the point where we should consider him as a perma play right now. I, in fact, will be benching him this week, despite the fact that I think that there's every chance that he can do well. I'll wait and see for the next 3 or 4 fixtures. And once we have enough information on Fulham, then maybe that risk can be.
Why is that the question? Let's talk about this because I want to address it because a lot of people own Bailey and a lot of people own Pereira.
Yep.
Now Pereira is on set pieces. Everton blocked and parked the bus against Chelsea. Correct, Zoph?
Yes.
Wolves were open versus Leeds. I don't think there was much difference in Bailey's position and Pereira's position. If you're talking about Bailey, definitely has way more pedigree. Are you picking Bailey just because of pedigree? I don't think it's as far off as people think in this debate, very specific debate.
Yeah, I think I like the explosive potential with Bailey, right? That's what
exactly.
you feel.
And exactly. And there's also the fact that Will are playing at home, and I think that counts for something. And I want to see a bit more from Andreas. I'm not really sure if he's that kind of guy who can get me a brace in a fixture. Bailey does strike me as that kind of guy. As Zoph said, he looks to be.
He's a goal scorer.
Yes,
he's a goal scorer. Andreas not that.
Yes, exactly, and that's basically the difference. You've explained it yourself.
Is there anything you have? Pedro Neto, you start him. Anything to chat about Wolves, Fulham? No, I think we can move on.
Move on to Brentford, Man United. Again, they've left this as a late televised game, Pranay. Your thoughts?
Comedy Night Central.
Oh,
I mean, we become a
harsh.
banter club at the moment, but this club is not. This could be a 40-minute pod if we're talking just about United. But what I will say is that, and we discussed this earlier in the pods as well, right? Where if you have a manager trying to implement something, you're already handcuffing him by playing the same midfield pivot that he's been playing for the last 3 years, which everybody in and around the club knows is not good enough. And that's factor one. And factor two is these guys are going through a change of system. And anything like that takes time. I thought we weren't bad in the second half for what it's worth. I thought once we made some changes that were fine, we got a little more control in the game. Fans need to be patient with this guy because he's a good thing. I'm very sure about that. But that's the thing with United, because it's talked about so much and there's so much overreaction and panic when it comes to United games. Relax, let this thing play out, give him a bit of time, and you will see improvement. What you want to see is improvement, and that needs time. You're talking about a team that's been drilled under the best English coach I know at present for the last 2.5 years, and then you have somebody who's been handed like a chaotic plate and is playing his first game. You saw things, and these are sophisticated tactics that he's trying to drill into this team. Something like that, and finding an identity will take time. That's where we are. It doesn't help that there is so much noise around the club. It doesn't help that there is a formation that he's been playing with Marshall at the tip of a striker, and he's trying to build that chemistry that gets hampered, and he's forced to throw in an Eriksen as a false nine because of an injury that happened last minute, and Sancho's dealing with illness in the last week as well. So there are a fair few reasons for which you need to give him time and patience, and that's about it.
FPL wise, a lot of people with Rashford. What would be your advice there?
Did you not see the 2 chances? Like, there was a Sanchez save where from point blank, I think it must be a 0.6, 0.7 XG chance, easy. And then there was another Bruno cross where Rashford was right at the end of it. He could have easily had 2 goals and we would have been singing a different song. Bruno could have buried his chance in the first minute and it would have been a different game. Game state is also important. Nervousness plays into players' heads. So if you have Rashford, hold him and start him for game week 2.
Anything to touch upon in terms of Brentford? I thought they were good value in the second half against Leicester. De Silva scored a lot of 4.5 mid options.
Thanks to the great management of Brendan Rodgers, I just want to add.
Yes. But yeah, I think Tony will take over. In terms of FPL, there's still a wait and watch.
Where do you, let me ask you boys this question. Tony, Wilson, Mitrovic, Bamford, rank these players.
Tony, Wilson,
right
Mitrovic, Bamford.
In terms of owning right now?
Owning right now.
Or over the season?
No.
Owning right now.
Let's say 6 weeks. 6 weeks now, next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tony, Bamford, Mitrovic, Wilson.
Wilson fourth.
Wilson
Yes.
fourth.
I was going to go
Because of
Wilson
the
first.
fixtures.
But I guess game week 3 and 5, right? City and Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. 13 Liverpool and 3 and 5.
Yeah.
It would be Mitrovic, Bamford, Wilson, Tony for me. I'm least convinced about Tony among these picks because I think
Brentford's fixtures are great.
Yeah, the fixtures
I
are
think
good.
Leeds' fixtures and Fulham fixtures are not bad either. I just don't trust them too much from an attacking
I like
point of
Bamford as
view.
well. He's second. But I don't like Fulham's fixtures. I don't like Newcastle's fixtures. I just put Mitrovic ahead of Wilson because he's cheaper.
I think I'd agree with the order
Yeah.
you said, Pranay. That would be my order as well. Mitro top for me.
Yeah, he's just a different category in terms of a player. That's all.
The entire team is built for him, and I love that they even asked him in the post-match. They said Mitrovic can't do it in the Premier League. His reaction to that body language, he just shrugged his shoulders, sort of thing. Like, so he's very aware of that, very conscious of that.
And the club is behind that. The club tweeted it in that sarcastic tone in the caps and non-caps.
Yeah.
Can't do it in the league. So there's a whole narrative here.
Yeah. Before we move on to Sunday fixtures, there are about 1,200 of you in the chat. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already.
Yes, and thank you because we wanted to get to 20K subscribers before Game Week 1 and we managed to do that. So thank you all for doing that.
Thank you.
And you will see tons more content. You might even see a couple more videos this week because we are getting quite spontaneous with our content this season. We already had a stream on Sunday, and we're not going to stop that. So make sure you have notifications on as well, because a video could pop up literally anytime. And while we're doing the plugs, it's worth mentioning we've got about 200 people in our Discord now, and it's been great to, I thought match day was quite fun, especially with people already jumping guns, etc. And we're trying to calm people down. People were trying to calm me down, etc. So if you just want to hang with us, basically you can support us. You can go to patreon.com/the FPL Wire, or you can become a member on YouTube and then get access to our Discord where you can hang with the three of us and tons of other good people on that channel as well.
Move on to Sunday fixtures. Forest, West
Yeah.
Ham. It's interesting, not much of an FPL investment from this fixture, but it's a big one for West Ham and for Forest to get off the ground because the other two promoted teams have put points. Forest didn't offer anything at all. It was Newcastle. They were the lowest XG team over the weekend, but I think at home they're going to be a lot better. Anything to talk about in terms of this fixture? I'm a bit lost.
I think this will be a low-scoring game, personally, because West Ham have struggled to score in their preseason matches as well, and they're lacking that creativity.
Yeah.
And I don't think for Forest have that cutting edge either. So I can see this being a low-scoring fixture.
Move on to Chelsea Spurs. Just spend some time on the next two games because I think there's a lot to talk about there. First off, I just saw that Anthony Taylor has been appointed referee, so I don't fancy our prospects for this game at all. I don't think we are ready. Tuchel said we are not ready. A lot of people were excited about James taking set pieces, but I thought every single one of those set pieces were absolutely rubbish. James was not his usual self. He didn't look fit. He wasn't making those runs into the box. But I guess the set piece delivery is a big thing. You stick with him, but not very impressed. I don't fancy us keeping a clean sheet in this fixture. I think Spurs are running much better. They're much fitter. Let's talk about Perisic. I think all three of us own him.
Before we that, I want to talk about Chelsea. I've got a few questions for you, Zoph.
Sure.
Because the signing of Cucurella in my head is a big deal. Like, he's a class player. And, the problems or the thought that I had in my head in terms of the Chelsea defense being different with Koulibaly and Cucurella, it's almost equal to, if not better than, Rudiger and Aspi, if you're thinking about the two that are going to play next to Thiago Silva. And then you going in for Fofana as well. So, that perception that I had in terms of I want to see what Chelsea recruit before I invest in their defense, like that is sort of gone away. I like your defense now. Kante is also fit. Do you share the same sentiment?
Yes.
In terms of clean sheet
potential is absolutely back. Yeah, definitely over the season is better because even now, because a big problem last year was also Kante's injuries. Now we have Gallagher to deputize in that position. He's a similar player, very hungry in midfield. So I do think defensively the prospects are a lot better. I think Alonso leaving also helps in that aspect because we're going to be much tighter on that side. But that being said, I do think this game we are not going to necessarily see Chilwell again. I don't think you're going to put Chilwell up against Kulusevski.
Yeah, fair enough. But there's a few questions because game week 3 onwards, Chelsea become a team for us to target because the fixtures are outstanding for a while. And I think it's worthwhile to just spend a little more time here. Reece James, is he more likely to play wing back now this season because of those recruitments that you all have made?
Definitely in the long term, but I think this weekend, it's a bit risky to play Aspi up against Son. This weekend, we might see that change against Leicester. We might see that change around game week 4. But in the long run, definitely the signings do indicate that more of James at wing back.
That makes James at 6 million a no-brainer to me. Because even if he's not playing because of the set pieces, even though he was poor at them, he shared bonus points. Like, that's a factor that we can't ignore in terms of how good James is for bonus points. Now, how do you think this whole Cucurella-Chilwell situation plays out? And do we see Chilwell getting rotated, or he'll start most of the times and get subbed off early? How do you think that plays out? Eventually, let's not talk about this game, but eventually.
So we have midweek stuff starting around from game week 5. From game week 5, I think, to game week 16, we're going to have a midweek fixture every week. So there's going to be rotation at left wing back. You can't expect a guy who struggled with an injury for so long to come back and play 3 games a week. So we're going to see Cucurella at left wing back a lot, and he might be the best defender because if he's not playing left wing back, he's likely going to be playing left centre back.
And he's going to play Rudiger's left centre back. Like, he's going to come forward and maybe have an assist chance or something, because I don't see him sitting there, And he's got recovery pace as well. So he's good cover for somebody like a Chilwell if he's playing. So you think he might be a good pick later?
Yes. But I don't know. I want to have a little more of a discussion in terms of macro, in terms of this 5 subs and all that stuff, because maybe we'll have that after the Liverpool game. There are two things I want to touch upon in terms of what you were thinking of the wild card. And number two, this 5 subs rule, what this means.
Yeah. Let's talk about wildcard. Sorry, 5 subs right now, because if it's in context with what you're talking about, let's chat.
So, because what I was thinking of now, you have these great guys like Pereira, Da Silva, even Neco Williams as bench options, but these guys like James, even if they're bench, they're almost always going to get on now. Should we, in maybe not now, but from game week 5, 6, look more towards the centre backs from these teams because they're all much cheaper. You have your James at 6, you have your centre backs at 5. For Chelsea, for Liverpool, you have Van Dijk, who's probably going to play every game. This is just a thought in my head. It may be completely stupid, but I can see Bakar is sort of poo-pooing it already. But I do think we have to take some context because every team is using subs. We already saw I think 4 subs on average made by every team this weekend. So how much of the point will the subs make on the bench?
I get your point, but I think it's dependent on each manager. So for example, when you look at James, there's this fact that he can play right centre back, which gives him more opportunity to play and more of a chance to feature. But when you look at Conte, now that those wing backs will potentially be a bit of a problem once the UCL kicks in. So you've got to wait up manager to manager. For example, I don't think it'll be a huge problem with Klopp or when it comes to Cancelo. I don't think it'll be a huge problem over there. Even with James, I think he'll be fine. I think the Spurs wing backs are where the danger is at.
I think in general, the whole top 6 sides, attackers, for example, you would not see Mount sub so early. Around the 60th minute, if not for the 5 subs thing in general.
He had a poor game also, right? So generally?
Yeah, in general, we were poor across the board. I wouldn't say he was the worst player, but it was strange to see him substitute that early. Now, teams with such big squads, that's going to be an issue. Now, earlier we were looking at we want to get more players from the top 6 sides, but this is now a caveat to that aspect.
Yeah, but I'm agreeing with Bakar here. I think it's very subjective and specific to managers and teams. And yeah, I wouldn't worry about Klopp. I wouldn't worry about
These are just very early thoughts because even somebody like Kulusevski, you're looking at every game, he might be a 65, 70th minute man.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus somebody like a Bowen, who we know every game almost is going to be a 90 minutes guy. These are just certain things to keep in mind going forward.
Yeah, yep. Out of the 3, who impressed you most in attack?
In Chelsea?
Yep.
No one really. I think Havertz was quite poor. I think Sterling was also struggling because
Havertz
of how
invisible.
deep. Yeah. And Sterling was struggling because of how deep, I guess, that line was. We need a little bit more space to run into for Sterling to be effective. So nobody really. But that being said, you'd probably hold Mount. I don't see who you'd jump off. A lot of people have him in that 8 million spot. I don't see who would really jump off to this week.
Yeah. And also, I think you sort of don't take too much from this game again because Everton parked a double-decker bus. And this might not be the case all the time. There wasn't any space for Sterling to run into, for example. So you just wait. I think the Spurs game will tell us more. It might be a different kind of game as well. And then you pass a judgment. In my head, from what I've seen, I think Sterling is going to be the asset to own in attack from Chelsea. But I don't know whether he's going to be worth 10 million. That's the big question mark I have in my head at the moment.
Because Baker made a good point. We're not a 2+ XG team. For 10 million asset, you want him to be from like a team that scores that many goals.
Yeah. Cool. Spurs. Andy's here
Baker.
in the chat. Let's talk FPL. Hi, Andy. Thanks for hanging with us. He's saying every time I hear a Chelsea fan say Cucurella is going to get a lot of minutes, he gets quite excited. So he's thanking you, Zoph.
Cheers for that. Let's talk Perisic. All 3 of us have him. I think I don't read too negatively into Conte's comments after the game where he talks about how he wanted to give some of the players who were there the previous season minutes. It seemed to be a matter of respect. He wants to give those guys minutes because they have achieved Champions League stuff. I think Sessegnon probably gets a Chelsea game, but I'm quite optimistic on Perisic starting versus Wolves in game week 3. Do you guys share that sentiment? Bakar?
I don't know. At the moment is where I am. I am getting a bucket of popcorn, sitting and watching what unfolds and then deciding in game week 3. But at the moment, before Conte's press conference in game week 2, I'm benching Perisic and starting Andreas Pereira.
Same, he's on my bench.
Because the sentiment that I share. But what Conte says in game week 2 might change my opinion. And Baker made a very good point, where Conte is fickle, and what happened in that first game, in the first half especially, was Cesc didn't make a run when there was a cross coming from the other side, and he was pissed with Cesc. And just 5 or 10 minutes later, he scored the goal. If that didn't happen, Conte would have probably been pissed off and gotten Perisic on in the second half, and then we'd be thinking, okay, Perisic is good to go right now. And he was like, Conte is quite stubborn like that. He's not going to change his mind about this world-class player that he bought for a short-term period because of 2 worldies that says. That said, I don't share the same confidence. So I'm waiting and watching till what happens in Game Week 3. And Game Week 3, the first game is Spurs versus Wolves. So we'll probably get some ITK information as well. So, I'm committing to probably benching him in Game Week 2 until Conte says otherwise, and then waiting and seeing what unfolds.
If you don't have him, you probably wait for him to get a start before buying him.
Yeah, I'm on a similar page with Pranil, and I don't think I see the same optimism as Zoph, because when I read the whole transcript of the press conference, I mean, it was fairly apparent that he wants the older players to get as many opportunities as possible, and as long as Spurs put in a decent show against Chelsea, I don't think Perisic will come in Game Week 3. So I'm sort of silently hoping that Sessegnon drops a bit of a poor performance so that Perisic can come in.
Chelsea jersey on, bro,
for Game
Sunday.
Week 3. I have one. Yeah,
I know, that's what I'm saying. Put that trick on Sunday. I want to see a picture.
Yeah.
So that's something that's worth monitoring.
But the big talking point to me, the big talking point in that Spurs game, is that Cesc got a goal, and that Royal, who was playing on the other side, and he got some attacking returns as well. And the positioning was startling. Like, in my head, is it worth messing with these picks who are at the moment looking a little dodgy when it comes to an X minutes perspective? In my head, yes. I think it's worth trying to indulge in and figure out this puzzle, because the upside is there. Because, like, I am disappointed in Harry Kane. I believed in him at least 10 times last season. All those 10 times he gave me like an L compared to the bets I was making against. And it happened this case as well. And I'm going to chill with Kane for a while. But those Spurs wingbacks, when Kane gets the ball, it's not just Kulusevski and Son making runs. It's both the wingbacks making runs as well. And those 4 are sort of playing their interplay and getting the ball in the center of the box. And if the ball is coming from the right-hand side, the left wing back is right in the center of the box. And the ball is coming from the left-hand side, the right center back is in the middle of the box. And they're legit attackers, like more so than Chelsea, with the exception of Chilwell, because Chilwell does similar things, more so than Liverpool, in my opinion. So it's worth racking your brains and trying to figure out what happens here, in my opinion.
At this point, it's also worth mentioning that when you actually look at his press conference, even when Conte is talking up Sessegnon, he almost ensures every single time he speaks about Sessegnon that he mentions that he wants him to learn from Perisic, and that Perisic is a world-class player, and that he will help him get a lot of valuable experience. So that's something which is funny, because even though he's talking Sessegnon off, he's still sort of indicating that Perisic is the much better player every single time he's being complimentary of him.
I think he has to give him a start to get him ready for the Champions League and stuff. So I think Champions League starts around 5 or 6, and Game Week 5 we have a midweek fixture as well. He needs to start giving him minutes pretty soon to get him up to speed. And I think the home game is a perfect time.
When I read that press conference in my head, I was like, yeah, he's just saying Perisic's first choice. But Sessegnon's performance has sort of muddied my thoughts. That's where I am.
Fair enough. I think the overall summary is you hold if you have, but don't buy if you don't.
No, don't say don't buy. I think it's worth figuring out if Perisic is worth buying. Game Week 3, it's not a problem for
obviously, I'm saying not right now, obviously, with a fixture against one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah. What do you guys think about Kulusevski?
He played really well. Easy hold. But I think it's Southampton. So a lot of people are talking about him being a world beater and that he can cover Kane and Son. That I don't buy. It was Southampton. Yeah. Take that with a quote-unquote pinch of salt, but good option.
And Son had the same XGI as Kulusevski. So on another day, the output could have been the other way around. So I don't really buy it, but well played to Kulusevski owners. If you haven't, you keep him.
Correct. Move on to Liverpool.
That said, I mean, he scored a worldie and his assist was good. So what's really working for him is the quality of the ball that he has on him. But when it comes to positioning and being central in the box, etc., I didn't see too much of that. So it's worth pointing out that this also did happen, but he's scored a beautiful goal and his assist was great. But just worth mentioning that this also happened.
Fair enough. Liverpool Palace. Let's talk about Darwin LR. I think he was the one who's really pushing you towards that wild card.
He's screwing with my head, I'll be honest. Because 1 hour before deadline, I kid you not, for about 20 minutes, he was in my team. And I was grappling as an FPL manager where I'm like, do you want to go down this risky road again? Playing safe early last year worked for you, etc., as well. And then after the outcome, also there are two managers fighting in my head, and I was like, Diaz could have easily had 2 goals. The thing to note is that Darwin didn't start, and that was a good judgment call. But in my head, I knew he probably wouldn't start, but I knew that he would make his way and be a game changer by game week 2 or 3. But where I've arrived to and where I am today, because it's frustrating on Sunday when you see something and you expect that to happen, to deal with it because you were so close to it. But then after 2 days, perspective does build, etc. as well. And I'm like, I don't need to be the first guy on him as an FPL manager. It's something I love doing, but I'm not gaining too much by being the first person. The fact that Darwin is playing Crystal Palace gives me the advantage and option of watching what happens in the Crystal Palace game. I think he's going to start. What's also very important to watch on Monday, I think it's the most important game you need to watch on Monday, is how that affects Diaz, how that affects Mo Salah, who was fairly wide, how that affects Trent, how that affects Robbo. Like, I can't stress how important it is to scout Liverpool if you are a proactive FPL manager oriented towards getting Darwin into your team. If you're somebody who's happy with Trent, Robbo, and Mo, or Trent, Diaz, and Mo, absolutely nothing wrong with that also, because nothing is going to change the fact that these are good picks anyway. That's
Bakar,
not going to change.
So, Bakar, are you convinced that Darwin is the best third Liverpool pick?
He's a great pick. He's going to be a big chance machine, and for someone who relies on statistics as myself, I think he's going to be a very good option going forward. But that doesn't mean that Robertson or Diaz become poor picks overnight, right?
Yep.
So I think if you own 3 Liverpool, I mean, the significant majority of us have either Robertson or Diaz as third picks. I don't think you have to move straight away. I think, like Pranil said, it's worth monitoring at least for a game or 2 before jumping. But if you don't have a third Liverpool, or if you are on a wild card this week, in that scenario, I think I would go with Darwin because I think he's just a big upgrade on Firmino, and he will get loads of FPL points. I'm absolutely sure about that. A lot of us are talking about how Mo Salah is going to be impacted with Darwin's inclusion in the team, but what I'm wondering is what's going to happen with Diaz, because since Nunes came on, Diaz looked very wide. And he barely had a shot since he came on. So I'm also
Bakar, they played 8
that.
minutes together. 8 minutes. Like, they were on the pitch together. Darwin and Diaz were on the pitch together for 8 minutes before Diaz got subbed off. So we don't have a sample size there.
Fair enough, but that's something I'm very, very keen to watch as well. So all in all, and keeping it short, if you don't have Darwin, you wait for him. If you're on a wild card, you buy him.
Yeah. I want to chat a little bit of meta here, because I think this is a very important conversation to have. And I'm asking you to, because it would take a lot for you to open your minds up to something like this. But we know that Spurs have a great run of fixtures, game week 3. In my head, the striker for Spurs is Heung-min Son. And I think he might be good for goals going forward. Mo Salah played wide, but he looked good in the second half, especially what I noticed was when Darwin came on, he actually occupied both CBs, which let there be a lot of space for Mo Salah as well. But is there a case in which something like this could work, where you go for a Diaz and a Darwin, and you go for a Son instead of Mo Salah? What would it take for you guys to be open to something like this? Zoph, I'll come to you first.
Salah to get injured.
Until then, you won't consider it.
Nope.
Not at all.
That's because of X
Zoph's
minutes
in-
primarily because of the congestion that's coming. Maybe now in the next 3 weeks, but purely because the congestion that's coming, I'm confident on Salah starting those games. I'm not confident on Nunes.
Cool. So you would go Darwin, but you'd compromise the Robbo or the Diaz spot. That's where you are
Precisely.
as a manager.
Precisely.
Yes, I agree. Very
Cool.
similar way, man.
And also, I'd like to discuss on a macro point now. I'll just pull up my.
I'll tell you 1 second. I'll tell you one other thing which I forgot to mention because sorry I cut you out, but it's important to mention that why this theory would probably have more weightage than usual is because of how fucking good Erling Haaland was. As a backup captaincy option.
At the mention of Haaland,
you know what I'm saying?
The language goes south, just like his interview.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying, right? In terms of meta, it's a discussion worth having where Haaland is a pretty good safe bet in the sense that we never had somebody who was as much of a sure shot as a captaincy option to compete with Mo Salah until probably this year in my head.
X minutes are going to be an issue from game week 5.
Yes, exactly.
For Haaland also, you think?
Absolutely. There has to, because I think one of the main reasons this has been publicized so well that Haaland is going to have his minutes managed because of his injury issues and all. And the congestion is unreal. From game week 4 to game week 16, every week there's a midweek fixture.
Good you're telling me this because I need this sort of therapy to shut my brain dead because every time I'm thinking about Liverpool also and the amount of goals Mo Salah scores between minute 65 and minute 90 because he doesn't get subbed and then he essentially becomes a striker and teams are essentially chasing being a goal down and Mo just gets a ton of goals in that 25-minute period also. So he can look like shit for the first 60-65 minutes but the amount of goals he gets in those last 15-20 minutes is like you feel like you've gotten away with it.
That's where the haul comes.
That's where the haul comes.
Correct.
Cool. I needed you guys to tell me that to shut my brain right now. That's all. I'm happy.
So the point I was making is I agree he's a good option, but without captaincy, right now I'll just illustrate with this my team, aka Bakar's team. So what we over here now, let's say you have to implement Darwin in, you'd probably have to lose Robertson. Like see Trent, Cancelo, I would still say sort of non-negotiables. They are staying in anyway. Martinelli stays in, Salah stays in, Haaland stays in. Jesus sort of like these guys are really good value for their price. Now, effectively, I have to downgrade Robbo and get the 2.2 out from James as well, which would mean playing either a Pereira or someone like, or Bailey every week. Is he worth that much? Now, is a Robertson and James going to outscore a Darwin and a Pereira?
It's either that or you sell Jesus. That's
where it comes down to.
Yeah, I think selling Jesus is more of a realistic option if you really want to shoehorn Nunes in the squad.
I obviously tinker, right? Because I have my fingers were twitchy on Sunday in terms of wildcard. So this is what I came up with. 4.5 Sanchez, 4.0, James, Trent, Cancelo, Saliba, and Neco Williams. So we're looking at 4 and I'm comfortable playing Saliba every week. 4.5 million, you're happy doing something like that. You're getting Mo, Martinelli, Aronson, and a 5 million midfielder.
But there are no good 5 million midfielders. Do you want to be playing that 5 million? But I talk about playing Aronson and that 5 million.
I don't need to play that. I don't need to play that. So I'll read out a starting 11 to you. So my starting 11 would be James, Trent, Cancelo, Saliba, Salah, Martinelli, Aronson, Haaland, Jesus, Darwin. And on the bench I have Neco Williams, Andreas Pereira, and a 5 million midfielder.
Pretty decent.
When I was tinkering in terms of pushing the wildcard button or not on Sunday, this is what I came up with. But my answer was like, I think eventually everybody is going to move to Haaland, Jesus, Darwin. And I don't mind taking the bet on a highly priced striker because I see at least 4 strikers, the 4 names that we spoke about earlier, Wilson, Bamford, Tony, and who was the 4th one? Mitrovic. I'm happy to go down and then upgrade a position in midfield or defense if I feel like. That's where I was with the wild card. But the problem is we don't know what we don't know. Like, tomorrow Trent and Cancelo get injured and you're having fires all over the pitch and you might need a wild card then. But outside of that, if we go to wild card game week 2-3, I don't think we're going to make too many mistakes because you're going to pick 8 or 9 players from these top teams. And I don't think you'll be far away from an ideal team at any point. I think the incremental value of wildcarding in the future, I'm not quite sure about that. That said, there are so many good picks in the field that your non-wildcard team could easily outscore your wildcard team.
I just think the season has just started. It's better if we get at least 3 or 4 weeks of data before we before we can jump on a wildcard team, I think there will be plenty of opportunities to come, and I don't
Bakar, but
just see
when did
too
this
many-
change? When did this change? I mean, you, me, and Zoph have played FPL for a while. There have been years where we've seen tons of wildcard. It was almost the norm to wildcard game week 3, 4. There was
I'm
never
all for
this.
it. I'm all for an early wildcard. I don't mind doing it early, but I just think I don't see much of a difference between your existing current team and the potential team you will buy right now to make it worth the
I agree.
wildcard at this point
But
in
my
time.
point is, I don't think it might exist in the future either. That's fair. But that's what we don't know. It could be worth it, but
it's a long
my
game.
presumption is, and we're here to presume in terms of how the meta
That's
might
where I
change.
disagree.
Yeah. Zoph, what do you say?
I think one more week is a lot of information. Like you mentioned, about 50% more information. I still want to see how the UCL pattern plays out, because I think there is a big swing post the international break.
Yeah. I think though, so essentially, if you want to see how the UCL pattern plays out, I think you're almost committing yourself to a game week, post game week 8
Because what
wildcard.
I'm asking myself every season, I ask is what is unique about this season? What is different about this season? And the main different thing is the fixture congestion with the UCL fixtures. So there is an opportunity there in terms of banking on the X minutes guys, the guys who are not going to get subbed. Your Mitrovic, your Solanke, even your Brendan Johnsons, your Jesse Lingards.
Yeah.
There is going to be an opportunity to invest these guys, and that might give you the opportunity to invest in your triple premiums or things like that.
Yeah. The conclusion that I had from the 25-minute stream that I did with Ivan was you need to proactively keep an open mind and just ask yourself every week, if I were to wildcard this week, what I'd do. Like, you don't follow through with it, don't do it. But I think because of the safety net of game week 16 and unlimited transfers, I just need to be proactive that way. That's all.
Enough. Move on to our teams. Before that, we'll just do a quick stats dive for a couple of minutes about the top XG players, etc. Now, this is our custom stats table from Scout. The top 5 players for XG non-penalty were Gross, Dendonker, Wilson, and Nunes, like who we just spoke about in just about 30 minutes. Nouri also with about a half XG. Salah only 0.38. In terms of the teams, this was surprising. Wolves were top after being 19th last season. So some of that probably down to Leeds, but definitely a more attacking team. Newcastle up there again second, Tottenham third. But generally poor attacking numbers, no team above 2 XG this weekend. Defensively, Southampton were the worst, United 4th, West Ham 5th. That's about it. No real patterns we can discern so far. Right, move on to our teams. LR, your team up first. No, sorry, this is my team which Bakar copied. Ramsdale, Trent, Cancelo, Robertson, and James. In midfield, Neto, Bailey, Martinelli, and Salah. Up top, Haaland and Jesus. First bench, Andreas, Perisic second. Rolling a transfer, not really much to talk here.
Haaland captain.
LR?
I'm just seeing if there's a place I would spend a transfer, and probably not. I'd be happy just starting.
You've already spent a transfer, right, Kane to Haaland?
No, for you guys.
For us, yeah.
I'm
nothing.
Nothing. I'm looking at your team right now. Yeah. Actually, I'm not very far off from your team. My team currently reached
3 players different.
Ramsdale, Trent, Cancelo, James, Mo, Diaz, Martinelli, Bailey. I'm starting Andreas Pereira at the moment. I have Haaland captain. I made the move on Sunday night. It was the most obvious move, staring in your face. Make that move. And Bamford. And happy to wait this week out. But next time we're talking, I probably could be on a wild card. I'm just asking myself that question every week, especially because Spurs and Chelsea have good fixtures, and I didn't want to commit to a wild card this week.
Right.
So that's where there wasn't enough information.
Let's do a Q&A. There are a few super chats. I'm going to scroll back and try to retrieve. You guys can send in your questions.
Okay, we have one from the Luke guy. I have wildcarded to sort structure out. Would have to do hits otherwise. So many known quantities. So no harm in being aggressive. Thoughts? I don't mind it, Luke. I've spoken about a wildcard. I think if you don't get too creative, if you stick to Trent, Cancelo, James as your spine at the back, if you keep Mo Salah in your team and Martinelli in your team, and if you go for 3 strikers, you won't be far away from what the template emerges to in the future as well. So stick to this sort of structure. Don't get too creative, and you should be fine.
Agree. I think a 4-3-3 or a 3-4-3 right now seems probably more optimal.
Yeah. And don't worry, people will tell you why the hell did you wildcard this early. It's fine.
Yep. Another one from Jonathan Bradley. Only willing to transfer out Dyer, a Perisic placeholder who I'll bring in game week 3. I Thinking of a game week punt to swap Dyer to Ake. Thoughts? I would rather save the transfer.
Yeah, I would say as well.
Yeah. If you're going for a nailed on clean sheet, then get Walker and let him be there for a while. That's a lot. That's all. If he's going RK, I just go safely on Walker and chill.
We had another super chat earlier, but I think we scrolled too past that in the chat.
Yeah, we scrolled past that. Send your questions, guys. Would you sell Trent for Nunes?
Trent had a quite poor game, but of course he's Trent. You expect him to come back strong.
Yeah, it's just one game.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I won't be surprised if people do 2 weeks later. I think Nunes is going to change the meta. I'm that convinced about it.
Don't disagree.
Yeah.
Rhea or
Updates
what
on
next week? I'm just wondering that. Updates on Bernardo Silva. The news is that the fee
Raya.
has been agreed. Once it's official, sell him.
thoughts, please. Nehal's asked us a question. Bailey to Aronson, Trippier to Walker, bank transfer and Game Week 3 mini card. Either bank the transfer. I don't mind the Bailey to Aronson move personally. I wouldn't sell Trippier.
I wouldn't do it.
I would wait. Give Bailey this week. You know which team he came on and scored against, right? Last season.
Everton.
Yeah.
That said, Aronson is good, man. I saw the full game and I'm fairly convinced about it. So I think he's good. Like I had the advantage of watching 90 minutes of him. He's a sensational player. I was drooling, not lying. That good.
Triple
Sterling
captain
plus
Haaland.
Jesus.
No, I was just looking at the triple captain Haaland. It's a bit early for that.
It's a great fixture though.
Yeah.
It's a really good fixture. So many people did triple captain Mo Salah also. People that did bench boost game week 1, wildcard game week 2 are doing fairly well in the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Bailey or Neto? A lot of people have this benching dilemma. What do you reckon, guys?
I like Neto more.
Same.
I'd go for Neto.
I like the matchup also more.
Yeah. I'd play Neto more.
Yeah. Bench Bailey, Rodrigo or Trippier?
Trippier is Brighton away. Rodrigo, I'd bench Bailey, I think.
Even I'd bench Bailey.
I'd bench Rodrigo probably.
Didn't he score
Okay,
last
this
game?
is a good question.
Scored, right? I think he did
yes.
score, yes.
Yeah.
This is a good question, guys, because a lot of people must be having this dilemma. He has TMM Boy 6 has KDB instead of Kane or Haaland. Should he stick or take a hit to get Haaland captain? I would take the hit, get Haaland, rip the bandit off, cure your mistake, and that's about it. That's where I am.
I agree.
Yeah. And just know that football is quite random like that, and KDB could brace and Haaland could get nothing, but it's the right move.
It's a longer term move. Just get it out, like you said.
Yeah. Soft question from you. Think that Cooks will be nailed game week 3 onwards?
Nailed is a strong term, but I think he's probably first choice, especially if you don't sign that additional centre back. I do think he will be first choice, but a lot of those games might be at left centre back with Koulibaly playing right. I don't know though if he's very comfortable playing Koulibaly on the right, because most games I followed in the Serie A, he played on the left side. So I'm not that confident.
One more question for you guys. I thought it was quite interesting. As Bakar answered, Zoph, what's your take? Should he sell Mahrez for another 8 million midfielder?
Who though?
Like Foden, for example.
Is Foden a sure thing?
I think so. That's why I'm asking you, because Bakar was like, don't sell. I was like, sell. What's your opinion?
It's not easy because ultimately, like to say, just stick with whoever you have, right? Because you never know if he starts, he could haul. You never know with Foden. Likelihood. I think I'd agree with Bakar. Just stick and game week 3, just get rid for like Kulusevski, who has a great run of fixtures from then. I think Kulusevski looks to me the standout 8 million guy right then. I think Saka also has, I think, Fulham, Bournemouth back to back.
I don't think Kulusevski is the standout 8 million. If I was to pick a standout 8 million midfielder right now, it would be Maddison.
I think with Mahrez, his owners picked him in game week 1 with the knowledge that he could be rotated against West Ham in game week 2. They in game week 1, so they picked him just for this game in game week 2.
Yeah.
So why would they drop him at this point in time? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
To cure the mistake, Bakar, you made a mistake. If Mahrez starts and braces against Bournemouth, take it on the chin. But long term, the other 8 mids are better picks.
Yeah, but the fixtures
chance-
are great
Sell him
this
when
week.
it looks like
Yeah.
he will.
There is now
start
Foden has a great
very,
fixture
very
this week.
enticing
But
fixture.
Foden might not. It might be the same thing. Foden might not play.
I don't think so. I'm firm.
Foden is slightly
fit.
more secure to play. I would think Foden is definitely more secure to
but-
play.
And
I
it's
don't know,
because
game
of
week
But if you have Mahrez, I would hold
Yeah.
on to him.
Even game
And
week
it-
3
and
or
it's
4, you
because of-
don't know Foden is going to start or not.
all of that is separate. Game week 2 is first. If you are getting somebody who's likely to play 80 minutes against Bournemouth, that could be potentially 15 points.
The thing,
It's
though,
a
Pranil, is
home
that
game against Bournemouth.
if both are starting, then Mahrez is the better pick in my opinion.
Yeah, but the chances of Foden starting are at 80% and Mahrez starting at 20%. You play the percentages and get
It's
him
not
in.
worth a free transfer, though. It's not worth a free transfer.
I am happy to wager it's worth a free transfer. I would be happy to say it's worth a hit also. I am that convinced.
Let's come back and
Like-
discuss this next week then.
And also, just while we're talking, I am a little skeptical of Kulu being the standout mid. Like Richarlison
That's fair.
was not even fit, and I don't know who's going to get Son or Kulu in the future games. So that's something he's a great player though. I just am not convinced he's a standout mid in that bracket. Yet.
My problem with Foden, again, not more than this fixture. You're making a free transfer, so obviously for the next 3-4 weeks. If you make that transfer, I just get a Saka then, who has a good 3 fixtures after with Foden.
But how much do fixtures really matter for a City is off?
No, more than fixtures
what I'm saying?
is certainty of playing. The fixtures matter for Saka, not for Foden. The certainty of playing matters for Foden.
Yeah, and I think that's where you and I differ in terms of how nailed on Foden is. And I don't have a doubt in my head. That's where I am.
That's the problem, right? And again, it's the whole 3 subs thing. Foden can play 30, 40 minutes again, bring him on even if he plays the 60 minutes. Puts me off.
Yep. Cool. I think that's good enough for today.
Yep, let's wrap up.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, just wanted to mention actually, Diaz and Darwin played together for 20 minutes, not 8 Bakar. So sorry about that because I remember he got subbed off. I forgot how early Darwin came in, but I just think it's a small sample size to judge, and that's why watching the game on Monday is important. Yeah.
Right. Let's wrap up,
Cool.
guys. Thank you for joining us. We will be back again next week. I think the next week should be a lot more interesting because a lot of us are looking to save transfers next week, but I think the meta will diverge a little bit once the transfers
Much
come
more
into play.
opportunities to attack next week as well.
Correct. All right, guys. Bye-bye. Good night.
Good luck.
Take care.